All right, everybody, it is now 7:00 p.m. on this Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. And welcome to our Township Mapleton Council meeting for this date. I call this meeting to order. And our first thing on the agenda is O Canada. If you can, please rise. A declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we have confirmation of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting held on June 11th, 2024 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda. Any comments? Corrections? All in favor? It's carried. We have no matters arising from the minutes and no matters under the Planning Act. So at this point in time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Patrick Kelly, who's our new Director of Finance, and Patrick's going to come and say a few words. Patrick, welcome to the Township of Mapleton.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson, and through you, Mayor Davidson, it's a sincere privilege for me to join the team here at Mapleton as your new Director of Finance and Treasurer. Very enthusiastic and committed to taking on this pivotal role, and I know full well the responsibilities and challenges that come with it. First and foremost, I wanted to express my sincere gratitude to our CAO, Manny Barron, and the entire team for entrusting me with this important role for the township. Your confidence in my abilities is both motivating and inspiring. As the town's new Director of Finance, my primary objective is clear, and that's to ensure the financial health and long-term sustainability of this township is maintained. This entails not only overseeing our financial operations, but also strategizing for growth, optimizing resources, and mitigating risks. I'm thankful for the foundational elements left in place by my predecessor, and in particular, the township's long-term financial strategy and multi-year operating and capital budgets. The core values that I see as critical to our team's success are collaboration, commitment, and trust. I bring nearly 20 years of experience in the municipal finance sector in the areas of strategic leadership, asset management, long-term integrated financial planning, budgeting, corporate procurement, accounting, and financial analysis. I am a strong advocate for volunteerism, having been a volunteer firefighter in Elmira for the past 20 years. I also currently sit as an executive member of the Canadian Network of Asset Managers, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors on the Municipal Finance Officers Association of Ontario. Having said that, none of my past success or accomplishments could have been achieved without a high-functioning team, and I firmly believe that the collective efforts of the entire finance team will not only sustain but propel Mapleton towards greater success. I'm also eager to collaborate with each of you on council and the senior staff team as we navigate the evolving landscape of municipal finance together. So in closing, I look forward to working alongside each one of you, building on the strong foundation laid before us and steering Mapleton towards a sustainable future. Thank you for your trust, and I'm excited about the journey ahead.
Thank you, Patrick. As I said, welcome to Team Mapleton. Glad to have you. We'll move on to item number 7.1. We have a delegation from the Grove Youth Wellness Hub. Jeff and Tiffany, welcome. I know you gave me a little bit of information you're going to share with all with council, but pretty exciting stuff.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson, council, staff. My name is Jeff Hoffman. I'm the executive director at the Grove Youth Wellness House. My colleague Tiffany Fagan, who's our team lead at our site here in Palmerston. And we're honored to be here to give you a bit of an update of what your support and leadership from this township has meaning for young people in our community. The goal of Grove is to build a more effective health system through integration and through collaboration, designed to meet the needs of youth, here in Mapleton and across Wellington County. We do this work by working together with over 40 different agencies, organizations, and partners. The Township of Mapleton is one of those key partners. We're truly thankful for your leadership. You're having a real impact, and we see it every single day because these places we work at are incredibly busy. Year over year, our youth visits are up. The number of youth who are accessing wellness services are up. And more youth who wouldn't typically be accessing services are receiving the support that they need today. Our early evidence shows that when youth can drop into a safer and braver space where they are comfortable, where they know that they're in the driver's seat, and that if and when they need more specific or intense support, they will reach out. Our data shows that access to these supports is leading to significant reductions in anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, psychological distress, and substance use in local youth. This innovative model of care works. Our team sees it daily, and the data supports what we're seeing. Tiffany's going to take us through some of the real details that we see on a daily basis here in locally here, share some of the data and some of our local stories here as well. So Tiff, I'll turn it over to you.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, the Grove Youth Wellness Hub is a safe space for youth aged 12 to 26. Our main space is located in Palmerston. It's totally drop-in, but it also has a variety of other services, including mental health, education, employment, and newly primary care as well. So I will talk a little bit more about one of our new little initiatives that's happening right here in Drayton, but we'll get to that. So what we are seeing today is this year alone, 32,000 visits to Grove Hubs. So that's pretty incredible when we think about how many youth that is coming through our doors every single day. That's 26,000 youth drop-in visits. So just coming by, just hanging out. That's 4,000 wellness or recreation visits, 1,600 employment and education support. So we do an awful lot of tutoring, lots of education support in there. And then 1,100 clinical visits. And that's just what we're capturing. That's not the informal stuff that's happening every day. That's just what's in our actual trackable data there. Oh, I've got all my slides. Okay. So this, the Palmerston site is our busiest site. It is incredible. We see 70 to 100 youth every single day. And if you can imagine, if you know the space, it's tiny. So that's coming in and out. And of that, like we're feeding 50 youth a day, mac and cheese, grilled cheese, pizza pockets, pogo sticks, you name it. We've become chefs. I believe I'm truly a chef there. Now of this, one really cool stat that I'll share with you is that in the province of all the YHU sites, there's 110,000 youth visits across the province in all of our sites. 30% of those visits are Grove sites and 12% of the provincial are in Palmerston alone. All right. And the next one is going to talk a little bit about our clinical youth visits. So I'm going to let Jeff step in and talk about our stats.
So as Tiffany mentioned, we're seeing more young people, up 9% year over year, 28,000 visits the previous year, 32,000 this year. Number of youth accessing services, so clinical supports, mental health services, primary care, educational supports are up 30%. So we're seeing a 9% growth in youth through the doors, but a 30% growth in youth accessing services. And it works. And we think one of the biggest reasons is the more time a young person spends with us, the more trust they build, the rapport they build within our site, the more likely they are to access the support should they need to be able to access them. And you can see that within the data here, even just the second half of our fiscal year, just that real growth. The numbers in red are our 2023, 2024 numbers. And so just real substantial growth that's really driven by relationships built with the staff when you're in that space. And then if you need support, knowing where and how to access that. Next slide, please.
This slide is always really interesting because what it's saying to us is that if we weren't here, these youth are going nowhere. So if they had a need for mental health supports, they're sharing with us, they would have gone nowhere or they're not sure where they would go. So we've really hit a niche market in being able to be that place and those people for these youth who didn't know where they would go or how they could get the support that they needed. We spend a lot of time in the hub building that rapport, which I think is the key to, as Jeff's saying, those numbers moving up. We have the ability, and I was sharing this, we're playing a game of pool with a youth and they start sharing about where they're going that night. We're able to instigate a conversation that we then learn about what's going on for them that's causing the challenges that are happening for them without them feeling like they sat in a chair beside their therapist and learned something. This is really informal and really intuitive to the way that we do our work. All right. All right, so the trends we see when we look at our young people coming in, and this is pretty standard across the province, lots of low mood and anxiety, and those anxieties can be from a variety of avenues, right? Whether it's school, family, social, that type of thing. Food and housing insecurity, as we hear everywhere. We have lots of suicidal ideation and attempts, some substance use, and then looking into those like relationship challenges. So whether that's social or familial and school avoidance, which I'm sure you all hear about quite a bit. And I'll let Jeff talk about the improved wellness within that.
So upfront for a young person, the Youth Wellness Hubs model is designed to be really simple and easy. You just walk in and often you come in just to hang out, right? Play a game of pool, grab something to eat. And then as you come back and you need to access service, you know where to access that. So the idea for a young person is that's really simple and easy to access. Behind the scenes, there's lots of steps in place just to sort of measure the work we're doing and measure the care we're providing for young people. And so we're able to measure the difference that we're seeing around how young people are feeling from the very first visit with us in a clinical capacity to their most recent visit with us. And that's the data you see up here on screen. Real significant reductions in areas around suicidal ideation, reductions in anxiety, reductions in depression, psychological distress, and substance use. These are impacts on young people within our sites here. So as we talked about, busier places, right? More young people accessing services, and then services that are truly having an impact on young people within our community. And data that not only does our staff see daily, but that we're able to measure as well and see these impacts for the youth who are in our spaces. And I'll also just share, so this is just some more data about what we see around young people. So the data in green is the previous fiscal year, and the data in yellow is our current fiscal year. But you can see lots of young people accessing our space who are receiving support around feelings or mental health. Education's a big piece of it, relationships, but some real growth in a couple areas here, in particular around housing. That's become the number of youth accessing supports for housing doubled year over year, and nutritional supports as well has increased as well year over year as well. So these are some of the trends that we're seeing within our spaces. And this data allows us then to inform our programming and inform the services that we're offering youth within our spaces. Next slide, please.
So these are sort of the three highlights that I wanted to share. So this year alone, we've seen a huge increase in our skills and well-being attendance. So that's just being in the hub, that's participating in our life skills, any of those types of activities, lots of feeding the youth within that. Increased access to that mental or wellness support and peer support services. So whether that's a clinical support, whether that's a outreach a sort of check-in, any of those sorts of supports where we might be supporting someone's mental well-being. And then increased community partnerships, which is what I'm going to get into next, around some really nice things that have happened. All right. So within our partnerships, one of our great partnerships, the Township of Mapleton and Minto. And one cool thing that we're doing locally that I'll brag about a little bit is we have a sub hub here in Drayton for the summer. So what we came to recognize was through the summer, our youth are normally bussed into us. And so we see them every day because they're coming to Palmerston to go to school. Well, they're not in the summer. So how do we get them? How do we get those supports out to them? So we reached out and we had a beautiful partnership where we're able to be at the Drayton Arena on Tuesday afternoons from 1 to 4. And we have whatever space we need and the youth can come in. I think they did lemonade and nail painting last week, but there's also clinical services. So if a youth wanted to see their counselor, if they needed some check-in support, they needed a resource, they can come in and they can do that as well. So really exciting. We're really hopeful that these kind of take off and we see some great outcomes from those. So we also have one in Harrison on Wednesdays and Mount Forest on Thursdays. So similarly, catching those groups, and the youth told us where they wanted to be. So we surveyed the youth through the year to say, if we were coming to you, where are you? And here in Drayton was one of the spaces that they said they're here. So excellent to know that. Some other things that we're doing some day camp programming. We do some after school wellness programming. So trying to get those younger youth to know about us so they're familiar. So by the time they're of age, they can hit us up and they're feeling comfortable to do that. And then our site in Palmerston. The other neat thing is that we have a new partnership with the Minto Mapleton Family Health Team, and we actually have primary care on site. So we have a nurse practitioner on site twice a month now to support our young people. And so far it's been a little bit around, lots of youth are on medication and they're unsure of, what are those side effects or what, those types of things, just conversation more so, but the ability to have those conversations in a safe space with someone they feel comfortable with. So that's been really lovely. And second to that, we noticed in conversation with our partners, anxiety was our sort of top hit of what youth were experiencing. And we don't have enough resources to service each youth individually with that anxiety diagnosis. And so we partnered with the school board and the family health team to create an anxiety group. And we ran a 6-week group for youth. And it was really well received and went over really well. And those youth were able to move on and not need further supports after that group. So lovely partnership that happened there. And then our school collaborations, which kind of touches on a little bit what I just said there, but we're in the Maryborough Public School, I believe it was like every Wednesday, doing some emotional reg, educational supports in there. And then at Palmerston Public, we did Preventure, which is an early intervention and prevention group with their grade 8s, as well as some anxiety groups for them with those transitions to high school. We do continued wellness support in collaboration with the schools. So with all the CYCs, we're in constant conversation, supporting those youth getting back and forth and into the right resources that they might need. And then working closely with Norwell, obviously, as our next door neighbor. We work closely with them all the time. Yeah. So the last part is my favorite thing to talk about, which is our success stories. And I feel like I have 100 of these because I just love talking about our little people and all the great things that they do. So I'll try to summarize it into just a couple. So we had a young person who was struggling to attend school and experiencing some suicidal ideation. And with some conversation and rapport from our wellness team over time, we were able to help that young person get reconnected with school and find some avenues to actually obtain their credits. So they spent some time really struggling with their mental health. There was some personal life. And so the ability to figure out those skills and go from there. Can I keep going? Okay. So we actually have a young person from Mapleton who had been coming to the hub kind of sporadically. We'd seen them sort of hit or miss. And in conversation, they finally opened up to us and shared with us that there were some real struggles at home, some challenges with attending school based on those home life experiences. And as they gained trust in the team, we were able to connect them with housing supports, food supports. They were able to get their credits, and they actually just got a job. And so really amazing when they were an individual who really struggled to even get out of the house to do these pieces is now working almost full time this summer. And we were able to kind of help them do those pieces to get there.
So Mayor Davidson, we just truly appreciate the opportunity to be here, and we hope that yourself, the council, the staff, the community are proud of what you've brought forward here for young people into their community. We're fortunate, we see it every single day, the impact you have on young people. Quite simply, it works, and it's working. To be frank, there's lots more to do. However, there's many more young people who need these supports, right? We are in early stages of providing the support, but you are having a real impact on youth here. And we're the fortunate ones who get to see it every single day. So thank you again for allowing us to be here today. And we're very happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Jeff, Tiffany. And as I said before, the council started today. What amazing results that have happened here at the Groves Hub in Palmerston. The location being right behind the high school, our kids going there, mental kids going there. It's a perfect spot. And can't say enough of the results that you've shown in your presentation, and shocking some of them, of course. When you look at the the housing issue, and you weren't kidding when you said nutrition, when you're feeding them, that's an issue there. And I looked at sleep. Well, if
Yeah.
you have housing issues, you're going to have sleep issues. So certainly a lot of work and cut out, and I'm glad the kids, the youth are coming out and seeking support and help and guidance through the Grove Hub. Questions, comments from rest of council? Councillor Ottens?
Hours are you open in Palmerston, and are you open on weekends as well?
So far, we are open for the summer hours, Monday to Thursday, 11 to 5 for drop-in, and Fridays, 11 to 4 for drop-in. And then our Drayton Sub-Hub is 1 to 4 on Tuesday afternoons. So conversations still continue around our fall hours, and it's dictated by when the youth are coming and when we see them. So we'll start those conversations about what they're looking for and when we might see them for the fall. So we'll see a little bit of adapting there. Previously, we were open 11 to 6 most days.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Councilor Martin. Tamlin?
Hold the button there. Yeah, just more of a comment, really. Just a lot of gratitude. As a teacher myself, and I work with grade 8 kids and those transitions, and work with a lot of the high school students at Norwell as well. To see youth using that space in their numbers, I mean, that the numbers is also, I mean, it's a social thing too. So it's not just all these kids in trouble, right? But it's for youth to have trust in a space and a safe space is just really special, and we're very grateful for that. So thank you.
Comment quickly. I would get this question a lot. It's like, who do you see in the hubs? Are they the troubled youth? Are they the bad kids? Who do you see in the hubs? We see everybody. It is a place just to come and hang out, a safe place. I think it's a real, I hear a lot from young people, especially in Wellington County, who will say to me, what they love about coming to the Grove is nobody knows why I'm here today. I could be here to play pool, play basketball in Fergus, right? Get something to eat, or I could be here to meet with a mental health clinician, and nobody knows the difference, right? And that's the really cool part about how this works. And so we see every young person in this space, and it's because it is a fun place, a place that you know, that they've designed, right? So like the place looks and feels, and the programs are what youth asked us for, right? Our youth advisory committee is the one who tells us what you know, what this should look like and how it should operate. And that's what drives them and brings them into the place. And then by being there in a positive place with access to the services, if they need them, they now know where to come. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Thank you both for coming.
Thank you very
sharing.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution here moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, of the delegation of the Grove Youth Wellness Hub, Jeff Hoffman and Tiffany Fagan, regarding updates around the Grove Youth Wellness Hub be received for information. All in favor? Carried. Next delegation, we have Mr. John Horst. John, will you take the podium, please, and hit the button?
Good evening, Mayor Davidson and members of council. I'm John Horst, owner of the property at 7433 Wellington Road 7. I'm making this presentation in regards to the zoning bylaw amendment 2024-09. In reviewing the township planner's report, it has accurately explained why I'm applying for a site-specific zoning bylaw and a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment that will allow my building contractor's business to legally operate from the existing shop building. The planning report does also identify the provincial policy statements and provisions that are applicable, and if the use complies or does not comply to these policy directives. The planning report goes on to recognize that limited non-agricultural uses like the one I am proposing are allowed in prime agricultural areas when meeting the listed criteria under section 2.3.6 of the PPS. WFA failed to mention in their letter response to recognize section 2.3.6 of the PPS, which gives the municipality the ability to address this matter at the local level. It is this provision of the PPS that we are relying on for council to consider and to support our contractor's business. We have addressed section 2.3.6 criteria to be considered when locating a non-agricultural use. This includes these needs to be addressed, the alternative locations for business and the MDS1, which we will address further. Some of the items that we mentioned before, the proposed use of the existing building will not be taking any agricultural land out of production. Neighboring farmers have made a public announcement that the existing operation does not impact their farming operations. We are a family-owned business offering our services to the surrounding community and creating several job opportunities in the community. We recognize our duty to pay the industrial taxes and development charges. The property with the existing building fits well to the rural community. We have been in operation in the existing building since 2021 and have not been addressed with any formal written complaints. I'll look to Andrew for a couple comments if you have some for that.
Hi, Council. Thank you for having me here. My name is Angela Becker. I live at 95 River Run. I met John through our son, who is now John's architectural technologist. Our son designed our additions to our home. I have had many of the trades, because I truly believe in supporting local, within our community come into our home or into our property to do whatever job, whether it was, electrical, plumbing, to redoing our driveway, which is why I'm here to support John. Because number one, I've been to his property. I'm an interior designer, and I can say very easily that I drove past it twice the first time looking for it because it was back off the road on the side of the property. It's immaculately maintained. And if you're driving past it, you don't really even notice it because it's not like bright red or fuchsia or anything. It's muted colors. It blends into the community. Going back to my son, John, my son was pretty much forced to work with John because his mommy said, "You get out and get a job." And John took somebody that is not within his own community, has mentored, employed, educated my son, has worked with my son for the past 5 years while my son was in university. And we all know what COVID was like for university or high school students, public school students. It wasn't easy. But John kept, come on, Michael, you can do this. And he has, and he also works for Imagine in Drayton. So why we moved to Drayton, I wasn't sure, but I now know. John's crew, because I've worked with them for 2 years now while they were doing our house, are an amazing bunch of young men, I should say, and there is no turnover. In the past 2 years, the guys that came to start my project to the guys that finished the project the following year are the same guys. That says a lot to me, especially in construction where the turnover can be quite rapid. Someone who's worked in interior design, I work with contractors my whole life. I kind of have a good feel for that. The crew stays, and when I've asked them why, because I got to know the guys, they said because our boss treats us really well. And that it's true. I mean, he treats my son very well. He pays way above minimum wage. I would say it's a true living wage, to the point that I was able to kick both my son and his partner out of our house, and they could move on to their own house. JM is just another one of the small businesses that are located on a rural property. It's not hard to see all of the ones that we have in this beautiful community. and I mean, like I said, I know most of them now. Having a number of these small businesses creates a community. I can think of one period, I think it was the first year that we moved here and John was working on our front porch and there was a fire at a local, one of John's community members. And he came up to us and he said, Ange, I hate to do this because we're like halfway through, but my community needs me. And that to me, I'm like, go, like the farmers need their buildings. I get it. Totally respect that. And because of that, and because of his honesty with me throughout my son's university and schooling and working with him, as well as my own working relationship I've had with him while he worked on our house. And I also want to say I am here because it was my ad, my house, that was in the article. And so because of that, I fully support John, obviously. So thank you.
Thank you, Ange. That was a bit of a history lesson there too again. Upon looking at the amendment to the zoning bylaw, we would be providing information to the township planning staff for site plan approval. We also recognize the concern that is being addressed by the WFA. We are in support, and I would promote structuring the site-specific bylaw amendment so that it will respect the neighboring farm operations to be able to expand in the future. I don't want to be a hindrance or cripple the farming industry with our operation. In 2021, we were made aware that the neighboring farm would like to build an expansion to their operation. The anticipated new building was proposed to be located in non-compliance with MDS to our existing residents. With on further action, they applied for a minor variance to reduce the MDS to our residents. And even though we had the opportunity to object to the matter, we were in full support of the new barn that they wanted to build, and it now stands across the road from our property. We fully recognize the odor and smell from this operation, and it has not been a problem for us. In regards to the MDS, I have discussed it with Linda Redmond, Township Planner, and how the bylaw may be drafted to protect surrounding farm operations so that we don't affect their ability to farm and do future expansions. And on this matter, I mean, I don't know too much on the MDS, and I always recognize Linda has a lot more knowledge in that. So I did, she did give me a lot of information on that, which was really helpful. And I'm sure there's more that she could share on that. But for now, thank you for the opportunity to address council. I believe the use may be deemed compatible with the site-specific bylaw in place. There should not be any impact to the surrounding agricultural operations. And the use that we propose would provide jobs and taxes and would contribute to the community year after year. And thus far, there have not been any written complaints about the existing business, where it is located there. So we would, we're looking, just here to look for the opportunity to be able to create a zoning bylaw amendment to allow the business to continue as it has. This will conclude of the comments that we had. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions from members of council to Mr. Horst? Thank you very much. Resolution here moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that the delegation of John Horst regarding support for zoning application ZBA 2024-09 and the ability to address the township planner's report be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. And next we have up the WFA. The WFA contacted the clerk yesterday to speak to this matter. Welcome, Janet.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Davidson. It's good to be back again. And John has already kind of summarized some of the comments in our letter that we did circulate, as you said yesterday. The WFA really is an organization that supports members to be able to farm. And so we're only bringing comments forward around the zoning bylaw amendment related to any of the neighboring properties and their ability to farm. John has addressed that, but we do see change over in properties and ownership. And so just really wanting to look at reducing any kind of conflict or nuisance for any kind of neighboring property owners, that is a concern. The other piece is the property that John is on is a 4-acre parcel of that was a surplus farm dwelling severance. And the WFA has advocated for some time that a surplus farm dwelling severance should be a maximum of 1 hectare. That is more than enough space to be able to have a home, a small outbuilding, and well and septic for the property. This is an example as to why, because the intention of a surplus farm dwelling is it's a residential lot. It's not a small farm, it's not a hobby farm, it's not a commercial space, it's not an industrial space. And when the parcels become larger in size, you create this conflict with their use because the size does allow for larger parcels. So the MDS is our one concern, and then just the rezoning this property, you're going to have provisions around it, but it does set a precedence. The comment was made about rural community businesses and that there's many of them in Mapleton, but they are on large enough parcels of land that those properties through the provincial policy statement would be deemed either an agricultural use or an on-farm diversified use because they are small in scope and size. So they fit because they're a small segment of the larger parcel of land. This is not. So again, this has nothing to do with the merit of the business, what they contribute to the community. It's really just around land use and the agricultural land use, and looking into the future, a pause when another large surplus farm dwelling severance comes forward. I realize the severances are done at the county, but you do have ability to comment. And I think trying to keep those severances as small as possible so that you don't have a large pie cut out of a corner in an island in the farmland, which also makes it harder to farm, and also having it small enough so that we don't create conflict of use in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Any questions to Janet? Thank you very much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Resolution moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that the delegation of Janet Harrop, Wellington Federation of Agriculture regarding zoning application ZBA 2024-09, 7433 Wellington Road 7, Alma be received for information. All in favor? It's carried. Next up, we have the minutes from the committees, item number 8. We have the resolution here, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information Parks and Recreation Committee draft minutes of June 13, 2024. Mr. Martin, anything to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, just drawing your attention to the comments from the committee down there at the bottom under the round table about some of the critiques or modifications around that ice allocation policy, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later when it comes back around. But yeah, that was really the primary focus of the meeting. And then we had kind of ran through the strategic master plan for Parks and Rec too. And took some comments from different members and stuff. So, and Jamie had kind of referenced the need to kind of refresh that particular plan. So yeah, that was the gist of what a 2 hour meeting, hour and a bit. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. I will note on those minutes that I was not present at the meeting. So the minutes will have to be changed to reflect that. Any other comments or questions on this? All in favor? It's carried. Moving on to the building department. We have the moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens. The Township Mapleton Council received information Building Department Report BD 2024-09 dated July 9th, 2024 regarding June month end and year-to-date building activity. Does council have any questions on the building report? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Next item up is 9.2.1 Canada Community Building Fund. After the building fund has gone through all the work, we now have it back to our councils from AMO and the Government of Canada. Mr. CEO, you have any comments on this?
Through your worship, not really, just the fact that it would be nice to continue to receive money, so to the tune of almost 1.8 million over the next 4 years, so hopefully the decision is quite easy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing much further to add. If council was to proceed with this, technically speaking, the first day of Sunday gun hunting in Mapleton could be the 1st of September, which is a Sunday. But at any rate, it's not guaranteed because we're at the mercy of the ministry. Any questions I'm fine with?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The resolution here, 9.2.2, moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens. That Township Mapleton Council receive for information Clerk's Report CL 2024-09 regarding Sunday gun hunting. Whereas hunting in Ontario is regulated by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and whereas it is the prerogative of individual municipalities whether to permit Sunday gun hunting. And now therefore be it resolved that the clerk notify the Ministry of Natural Resources that the Township of Mapleton supports Sunday gun hunting within the Township of Mapleton in accordance with the provincial legislation. And further be it resolved that staff request the Ministry of Natural Resources to process a regulatory amendment to Ontario Regulations 663/98 under the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act to include the Township of Mapleton in the list of municipalities to allow Sunday gun hunting in Ontario. Questions from members of council, comments? Councillor Reid.
Through you, Mayor, for the clerk. I'm just wondering, you stated that September 1st would be the date possibly. If we've missed that deadline, what would the date be if they won't allow for September 1st?
The second tranche would be obviously in 2025, excuse me, sorry. And I just would have to look at my report, but it's in the spring. So it's just not jumping out, but yeah, we would be forced to wait to the spring of 2025.
Other questions? Comments? All in favor of this report? Opposed? That's carried. Sunday gun hunting will become a reality in the township of Mapleton. Next item up is 9.3 from the Finance Department. This is on the energy consumption update report. I think Heather's going to come and speak to that at the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson and Council. Could you run through to the PowerPoint? So what I decided to do is I wanted to roll these two reports up together because they're very interdependent and they're relate to each other. So the energy consumption report update is a comparison, and the energy conservation demand plan is the report that will, most of the data is going to be in there as well. Next slide. Okay, so the reason that we're doing this is it's under regulation 25. And we need to come up with a plan, and we need to report on our emissions and energy consumption throughout the year. And so our goals and targets for the 2020 to 2025 plan were to reduce consumption in all of our operations by an average about 2%. And our start year for comparison is 2017. And we will be looking at the data from that date as well as the usage from the last year. So when you take a look at the report, spreadsheet here, we're seeing that 2017 is, 2021 was a COVID year. So we're seeing a decrease there. And then when we take a look at year 2022, we're seeing it climb back up and continually climbing. Part of the reason there is we have a few extra services. So we put in the splash pad in 2021, I believe. Also, our PMD arena is using, it was one of our highest energy usage, and that actually went up last year even higher. So we should be looking at why that is. And I'm taking a look at the corporate facilities, and that has come down. Now, when we take a look at 2017, we got rid of the Marybarrow Road Shop. So that is part of the reason. And also we did have a decrease in our consumption. And when we look at our water and wastewater stations, we added the water tower last year. And so that is increasing our service levels. So now we have higher water pressure. So, you know, that costs something. When we take a look at our natural gas use, we see that we are actually meeting our 2% per year goal. And we came down 12% in our usage. So in there, we're doing well. Now, when we look at it combined, we see a total of, there's a factor by which you take the natural gas and you equate it to kilowatt hours. And factoring that in, we're seeing that we've actually gone up 9% from 2007, or 0.09% since 2017. I also wanted to speak to the street light there. Street lights, it's gone up 15%, but honestly, there's nothing we can do about that figure. That is not even metered. It's got to do with the amount of units. We're billed per unit. So as we add services, we're going to get more kilowatts there. Again, we're seeing recreation has gone up 10%, corporate facilities gone down 14, water and wastewater stations up 12, and then the full amount was 0.09% that it went up. When I want a look at this, I also am thinking about growth. And when we're looking about water and wastewater stations, we're not talking about a building footprint. We're talking about pumping water, and that's something very different. So I wanted to take a look at the data in the next slide a little bit differently. And I wanted to say, to look at it saying, if we're looking at the data by in megaliters, how much power does it cost or do we use to pump a megaliter? And a megaliter is 1 million liters of water. It's a lot of water. So I think that if we take a look at these figures year by year, we can see that we're gradually coming down and we're pumping water more efficiently. Now, we can't really compare these figures to each other because sometimes there's different elevations involved. There's different, the processes are different in the different types of plants. Maybe they're pumping it further, the water further in some cases. But we can take a look at it year by year. And if we look at this, we've come down 11.7% since 2017. We're very close to that goal of 2% in our water and wastewater if we factor in our growth. So in the next slide, I wanted to look at the energy and intensity by facility. And here we're taking a look at the building footprint, and we're taking a look at the amount of square meters is in the building, and then the consumption. And here we're seeing per square meter how we're using that energy. So we're seeing a variance between all of these building types because there's different, like the buildings are different. We can't really compare the township office with the garage because the doors are wide open in the winter, bringing in the vehicles. There's a height issue there with the amount of and heat rises. So it's difficult to compare it that way, but we can take a look at them year by year and try to find buildings that are similar in nature and try to figure out why is there a variance. For example, when we take a look at the Drayton Fire Station at 164 kilowatts per square meter, and then the Maryborough Fire Station at 104, there's a big difference there. And it would be interesting to find out why that is. And I think that if we started maybe did an energy audit or something like that, we would be able to try to pinpoint what's going on there and why are we having these variances here. The next slide shows us our costs here. And our costs, I mean, our usage only went up 0.9%, 0.09%. So, not very much. We did see 6.5% increase, and that's really just the rate increases. We do have a retainer agreement for stabilized predictable rates for our gas usage. So the key points other than the historical data, next slide, is that so we're going to be sharing a position for an energy management professional with Centre Wellington. I think that is going to really be beneficial for us going forward in managing our energy. Center Wellington has a lot of the same, it's about the same size, and it has a lot of the same service levels, service points. So I think a lot of the work that they do over there will be able to look at and see what could we use over here that would be similar to help with that. We have our Environmental Advisory Committee. They would be working to help implement some of the changes and looking at some of the data we've put together here. We'll continue to monitor our energy consumption as we do on a yearly basis. And we also have our building condition assessment report. And I think that that might be a really good tool as well to take a look at some of the equipment that might be a little bit older and might be up for making more efficient equipment in our building facilities. So I'm going to move on to the Energy Conservation Demand Management Plan. And this again is regulated. We have to update this every 5 years. And it's time. So, and we're reporting, part of that is to report on the consumption data annually, which we already have covered here. So the document structure for this document is that we need to put in goals and objectives here. And what I itemized here is that we want to exemplify energy conservation stewardship and leadership, to continuously improve energy efficiency for our facilities. And we're going to use this plan to help monitor, evaluate, and measure corporate energy use. And our energy conservation demand objectives would be to enhance overall staff understanding of energy and water consumption, and consider energy efficiency in the procurement process of equipment upgrades and capital spending. The targets that we will go towards to achieve our goal, I wanted to break it down this year. And instead of saying 2%, I thought that we could divide that a little bit and say 2% for our corporate buildings and the buildings that people are using, and then look at water in a different way. Let's take a look at the amount of water we're pumping and try to do 2% less and not less water, sorry, but do it more efficiently, 2% more efficiently. Also, the document wants us to report on last year, on the things that we have accomplished since our last energy CDM plan. And the annual progress is that we're putting our reporting, we're doing that on a yearly basis. We moved our base year to 2017 when we built the new Public Works Garage, just so that we were comparing apples to apples. We have not completed our energy audit. We should be doing that shortly. Our energy and water efficiency is part of our capital budgeting planning. We think that we do that fairly well. We do look at that and try to implement wise choices there. Utilize available incentive funding. We have put in the charging stations that were funded by EPCOR, and Drayton Sewage Pumping Station was funded by the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, and it qualified for under GHG qualifying help with that approval. We work with Aqua to find equipment and find good replacements for pumping our water. Business cases develop for the projects. I don't think we've been doing that. I think that we do it on a lighter scale in that we do look at energy when we're doing our capital, but I don't think that we actually do business cases for that. Staff will develop annual energy water conservation plans. We haven't been doing that either. I think that the focus has been sort of on the asset management plan. We've had that coming at us full speed ahead. And there's competing priorities. So other achievements here, I've already mentioned this, the Environmental Stewardship Committee. We have our Flow electrical charging stations. Water and wastewater is programmed to utilize low peak times for hydro rates. And we've made an agreement with LAS for stabilized natural gas pricing. And this is basically a repeat. This is part of the report, but it's showing the 9%, the 0.09% increase. So our current and proposed energy conservation and demand management measures. So we have the shared position dedicated to energy management, energy audit for the township's top 5 energy consuming facilities. We should be doing that. Energy reporting, we're doing that on an annual basis. Consider energy efficiency incorporated into our, I think we are doing this, energy efficiency incorporated in our capital budgeting process. And we're continuing to work with other agencies to explore opportunities and utilize available funding opportunities. I put in here a few of the future projects that we have coming up that could be looking at and making our choices as we implement the new equipment and looking at more efficient equipment for these projects. And to wrap it up, we've put the plan together to assist the municipality in meeting our energy-related goals, reporting requirements, and striving for continuous improvement.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, any questions?
I'll go ahead and ask that now. Questions for Heather? We have 2 reports in one here, so I'll read the recommendations after we have questions on either report. Councilor Martin?
Mayor, just a comment really. I appreciate that this is a mandatory report, and I think Heather did a great job of taking a fair amount of information with an awful lot of variables like growth, COVID, increased rates, all these things that are impactful on what the overall numbers are, and kind of transforming it into reports that even I can understand. So I appreciate that. I also enjoyed seeing the recommendations around efficiencies in energy and water. I know this township has historically kind of exercised our ability to increase rates in the name of conservation. And I know, in the short term, it does seem to have an effect, but in the long term, things seem to right themselves, and just increasing the rates on water and wastewater, long term doesn't seem like a real efficient strategy. So to be employing other strategies like working with SEMA and Aqua around efficiencies with how we do business seems to be a great strategy. So I'm happy to see that as a potential outcome moving forward. So thank you for the report.
Other comments, questions? Yeah, thank you, Heather. I look at it myself when you have our targets, achieving our goals. I do like how you separated those 2 out when it comes to water and wastewater compared to our buildings. fabulous idea to do that. I think it makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much. So council, I do have two resolutions here. First resolution is moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that the finance report FIN 2024-14 dated July 9th, 2024, reporting the energy consumption for 2023 be received for information. Any comments or questions on that report? And all in favor? It's carried. And the next one, 932, is moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. That township able to council receive for information finance report FIN 2024-15, and two, that we approve the energy conservation and demand management plan for the years of 2025 to 2029. Any comments, questions on that? All in favor? Perfect. Next, we have a planning department are going to talk to us about short-term rental accommodation. Michelle.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Davidson, to all of council. At the end of the day, you have a lot of recommendations in front of you, and that's because as the planning and development manager, I can only do so much. I have so much delegated authority, but I'm just sort of like the big giant head. And the other piece to that is my counterpart over there being Rick Hobbling for our bylaw enforcement officer. For as many bylaws and rules and that we put into place, there always seems to be something else that comes forward. And thanks to the provincial and federal government for doing their best to create reasons and ways to accommodate for our housing crisis, they have put on ARUs as of right. And we just heard today that there's some new federal funding that's coming forward. And in order for us to qualify for it at a minimum, we have to be willing to up it to 4 units as of right onto land. So ever since these announcements started, we have been inundated with people. Everybody wants to put a tiny home, a bunkie, something on their property. And there's a lot of really good reasons for that. And there's not to say that there's not a need. Nobody's mistaking that, but we've never operated from that before. And in the absence of a zoning amendment or bylaw, I have no enforcement piece for when people go ahead and do whatever they want. If it doesn't meet building code, it doesn't meet property standards, it doesn't meet a number of different things. We also know that through COVID, there was also a great uptake for that as well, especially coming out of it, because people are hurting. People need other forms of income, so they can either try and sell their home or they can put in an extra unit, put another unit on their property. But then the issue we have is we don't have any allocation. So again, I have to be the person that crushes someone's dreams to say, yes, the province has said you can do that. Unfortunately, we still cannot allow it or approve it. But if you live out in a rural community, you have the option of well and septic. And so we have those that have come forward to us, and we've already seen where council has had to approve, because we do allow for bed and breakfast. We always have. We do put a cap on it in terms of the number of rooms. It's supposed to be minor. It's within your principal residence, and everybody's happy. We're good with that. So again, with the Airbnb, Verbo, Kijiji, Facebook, however you want to advertise it, they've popped up and people are doing quite well, and we have no way to monitor it. I don't know if people are being taxed properly. And just recently, another successful story came forward where we made the exception and approved it, that you can have it on your property now, and it doesn't have to be within your principal residence. Through this process, we get more calls about, can I put 3 on here? I want to create a glamping situation. I want to create these other types of experiences. And again, we don't have a hotel. We don't have a motel. So it's not to say that there's not a need. And we also, have the theater, and now we have the Chop House. So ideally, to help grow our, economy, we need all of these different pieces. But when things go the wrong way, I don't have a good way to address it. So Rick and I got together to say, what are we gonna do about this? Because I have another and more than one that's come forward now where they have an income property. Nobody lives there. There's nobody on site. Do they need to live in the community? Do they need to live within a certain radius? Do they need to have somebody, at least if something does go sideways, that they can call besides the police? Are they being inspected? Were they built properly? Do they have the proper separation? Do they meet fire code? Again, unless somebody complains, I only get to hear about the ones that people want to put on their property. And through some of our processes, again, the other ones come forward. And I'm just looking for a way to manage it. We are not unlike our other communities. Central Wellington, actually, I believe recently just put out an RFP, and if they haven't done it already, they're doing it soon. But that's not coming forward probably till next year. And I don't really feel like I have the time to wait, but as council's really the one in charge, I'm hoping for some direction from you. So Rick and I got together, and because he's the one who's going to have to follow up with this. It's not me. I'm going to take care of the paperwork on the other side. Linda's going to write the report to make sure that we're keeping with all of the official plans and provincial policies. But now that we do have an official bylaw enforcement officer, he also needs the tools then to deal with it. So what you have before you is purely a draft. It's purely a sample. It's missing a lot of information that will fill in for you if this is something you want for us to pursue. So the biggest thing we have on here, and any change we make, because it will absolutely have to impact our zoning bylaw, whatever decision you decide to go with, we will have to hold a public meeting, because that's just how the Planning Act needs to have accountable. The bare minimum is you let me know how you'd like to move forward with this, and we will update so that we have a much clearer definition of if you're going to have a short-term rental property, be it inside your home, on your property, or elsewhere, what those parameters are. Do you want to cap? Do we want to limit it? Or do we go what we put in front of you, which is, for perhaps a upfront fee, and then perhaps just like we do with our dog tags, a nominal ongoing annual fee. And that will we'll put you on our list. You will register with us as a business. So that then potentially involves the clerk. After that, it then sits with Rick and our building department to ensure that a fire code, building code, ideally we want them up front, and they wouldn't necessarily have to pay someone like Airbnb to advertise. The other ones that are less expensive or free. But then if people are contacting us, at least at a bare minimum, we'd be able to tell them that, yes, they exist in our community. Here's where they are. Here are the ones that we know that exist and have a floor plan, a fire escape, are built to code and fire code. And that there is a responsible individual, at least over the age of 18, be it within the vicinity or somewhere close by, that if something goes wrong, they have it. We also have a sample tenancy type agreement and rules that we've put in here. We don't have to supply any of this. It's just Rick thankfully went around, picked out the best of what he found. And we also went through and drafted a potential bylaw that gives you definitions, and we can pick it apart. But that's not my expectation tonight. It's just, if you'd like to look at something moving forward like this, then great, we will continue to pursue it, and we will host a public meeting, and we'll get feedback. We might not get anybody, and maybe it doesn't matter, but it all fits within our scope. Or we clearly define it. You want to keep it simple. You want to put a cap on this. You want to say, nope, we just want it to be on your property where you are, no more than X number of rooms or units. And again, all the same things would apply that, you share the driveway, you have to provide some form of parking and that's it. And we don't manage it, we don't monitor it, because if we do take that on, I constantly complain, there's only, one me and I only handle a piece of it. There's only one Rick and we also have him that we share our services with Minto. I reached out to Minto. Minto doesn't have the same issues that we do. They don't feel the need for this, so it would not become a part of the shared agreement, so it doesn't impact us from that perspective. And again, it would truly just be, we would set it up online, they could register, pay the fee, we would post it and make sure that inspections were done at least a minimum of once a year, and then they would pay their annual fee. So that is just a suggestion that we're putting forward. But at the end of the day, I do need to know how to move forward with this, because it's not my intention to penalize people who are looking for another source of income, who are also providing a service, because as we heard, like, place matters. What kind of a culture and community is it that we are looking to build? But I do need some direction from council. Thank you.
All right. So I will read the resolution for council and then we can have discussion. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin. The Township of Mapleton Council receive for information Planning Department Report PL 2024-04 regarding short-term rental accommodation. And that council also received for the attached draft bylaw related to the licensing and regulation of short-term rental accommodation in the Township of Mapleton, stipulating the impact on housing and rental supplies be considered where appropriate in all future STRA initiatives. And further, the council authorized the scheduling of a public meeting at a later date to receive feedback from the public on the proposed regulations of short-term rental accommodations within the Township of Mapleton and the zoning bylaw amendment as required by the Planning Act. And further, that council authorizes staff to summarize the public submissions and bring forward a final bylaw for council review, consideration, and adoption. So open it up for questions and for council members or comments or help with direction. Councilor Tamlin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you for this draft here as well. There's been an increase in, like you said, of applications wanting these, and it's changing policy as well to allow them as well. We know they already exist in the township. So I think to be able to facilitate this in a very positive way is a way to go. So I would support moving forward with what you've done.
Thank you, Councilor Tamlin. Other comments? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do think that I love the fact that we have a report on this. I do think we have a duty to be curious around what, regulation of short-term rental accommodations look like. Just as Michelle was talking, I'd be curious to see, you started to talk about, in the absence of this particular bylaw, you do need direction, down another path as well, right? So whether we create limitations, I'd welcome a report on like some more details on what that looks like as well. I do know that we've had properties, come through this room where an application of a short-term rental accommodation bylaw could be appropriate. I'm kind of worried a little bit about kind of over-regulation. I know we need some regulation on this. But like over my morning coffee, I read countless articles in cottage country where this is just an absolute nightmare trying to enforce. And I would expect that will turn into the same thing here, which means increased staffing costs. These things are never revenue neutral, which turns into just an additional burden on the taxpayer. And I get what the intent is. But I guess what I'm suggesting is I would welcome kind of you gave us a sneak peek. I would welcome a more comprehensive look at what option 2 would be in the absence of this bylaw, is where I would be coming.
Thank you through you, Mayor. So that's why I said, like, you've got sort of the biggest one and we can go to. And it's not to say that I'm advocating for it, but it's sort of like, here's the extreme, or we just go with, we'll make a clean definition, we'll cap it. There's no necessary like need for us. It's just another one of those, if you do that. And that's why in the financial section, in the absence of, I can't tell you what that's going to look like. Just like for Rick, say in Minto, he might deal with a completely different level and number of property standard issues that we don't experience here. So I don't know how much of his time, and until we go down that path, it's difficult to say. We aren't cottage country. We have cottages, but thankfully, they don't belong to us. That all sits with, GRCA and we, as far as I know, they've not come forward with any concerns about other people who, are allowed to either rent them or not rent them that aren't to the original owners. Because then again, it's not because I'm getting complaints, and like none of this is about a complaint base. The other piece is that, the federal government also put in then as of, 2024, as an attempt to decentivize, just like adding 3 or 4 more units to your home. Everything's done with the best of intentions to create long-term and stable housing for people. That is not what's coming forward here. That is not the impact it is having on our community. And there's nothing from the province or the federal government that gives us any direction if what's coming forward is for short-term rental accommodations. Well, why can't they? Right? So that's why I'm somewhat leaning towards you, but you're absolutely correct. As we grow and as things happen, it's either going on the tax base or we're doing fee for service, and we're going to have to increase our staff. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts about it. So it will have a potentially large financial impact. But right now, it could be completely minimal. We could offer anything up as a trial basis, which is also why the public meeting, even to see if there's an appetite, is it something that people would want? And then we can reach out and do more work with the other similar municipalities that already run it. And I'm saying, like, some places make them pay $5,000 and then a certain amount every year. And then we have others who make them pay a nominal, maybe $400, and you pay $50 a year to keep things up. And we absolutely in no way, shape, or form would I be looking to increase our liability. We are not the ones that I want, to get the phone call for. If there's a problem, you're calling 911 or you're calling whoever that responsible individual is who's been left if the owner does not live on site. Some have it where the owner does not have to live on site, but they have to be within a certain radius, or they have to be able to respond, within an hour or two, whatever the on-site emergency is. Or we don't do anything other than provide a clear definition. But for me, the main thing is, are you okay with allowing that type of property use without anybody being on site? If we go up to, we already have the 3 that people are allowed, whether anybody's on site or not, and that whatever we're creating is for short-term rental accommodation. And then there's the issue of whether or not we cap it. But then somebody would have to register with us. And again, the intent is not to penalize. It was just, we can go full on. But yes, there will definitely be a financial impact for that. And when you say that you'd like to have greater detail, is it just the financial piece that you're looking for?
No, actually, just like whether it's capping, all that stuff about whether we propose someone has to live on site or not. I'm not sure I care. But like, why do I care? Why do I not care? I'm not really sure why I don't care. Just if someone lives in Fergus and they have a property up here, like, so it's more kind of details around that end of it, not necessarily the financial piece.
Okay, that's in there. The package has it where we've set it up where we want the name and registration of a responsible individual, who to call and that you have to be that somebody has to be within a certain radius, but does not have to live on site. So what you have in front of you is the sample of it's all open. And either we include the piece where we will keep a registration and licensing aspect to it so that we can keep it all up to date. And we will have a page on our website where people can just log in and do that. That's neither here nor there for us. It's more about then the inspection and the licensing and whatnot. And then, and that's it. And then the bare minimum option, but the bigger option is what you have before you in the samples, in both the bylaw and in the licensing package.
Other questions? Councillor Ottens.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, I think I agree with Councillor Martin. I think there's something we need here, but I don't want it to be onerous for the owners either. I don't want this, giant pamphlet of information they have to fill out and endless regulation, but I do see that there's a need for something about, I think the biggest problems we always get with these are parking and too many people in one house, right? Too many people, that seems to be the big problem that comes up with these. And I think having a public meeting might really test the waters as far as what people think about this and how many are out there, how many are, either already have one or are considering it, and what their feeling is about the regulatory aspect of it. So I think the public meeting might be kind of useful just to get them out of the woodwork and see what we all have and what we're dealing with.
Other comments, questions? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, through your Mayor. At this point, we're not monitoring ones that could exist already. Obviously, looking at cabins and things. I mean, you can go on Airbnb and see that there's some on there. It's obvious out there in public. So right now, ones like that we're seeing on there wouldn't obviously be even inspected at this point, correct?
Through you, Mayor, that's correct. And that's how some of these things, are coming forward. And just even like looking at the amount of money that they have to pay for, be it a Vrbo or an Airbnb, they take a good chunk right off the top for that. And the more people that stay on there, the more money that they get. So we were trying to see, hoping that if we were going to do it that way, that would potentially incentivize people to come forward. Because again, I'm more concerned about what we're doing going forward. And ideally, hopefully that the people who already have them in existence, because the intention is not to have everybody show up for a zoning amendment. That's not what this is about. This is a way to, how can we all get something and strike a bit of a balance for this?
Anybody else? Thank you for comments and questions. I do have some for myself here. As you stated, that none of this is because we are getting a bunch of complaints. So this, to me, it seems a little bit of overreach at the moment, of too much. Maybe the baby steps, maybe as Councillor Martin has alluded to, just kind of say the definition of what they are might be enough for us at this point, so that we can move on later in the future if we need to, with a comprehensive bylaw as you have here. The other thing I'm concerned about, and you mentioned it about the cost, and Councillor Martin had mentioned it about as well. If you regulate it, then you have to enforce it. There's no sense having any bylaws that you're not going to enforce. And with that enforcement comes cost. So we have been working really hard at this council to do cost recovery. So what does that cost recovery look like? If you have to have inspections, you have to have bylaw, then you have to have planning department and the clerk, as you mentioned, for all that is a cost. And what would that number look like? And that would have to be put into the application fee and also cover off the yearly fee somehow. Once you get that first, I know the initial one would be very expensive. And then covering off the future every year as they come back and apply again. So that's something that before I would even consider going with this large one, I would want the numbers for how we're going to recover those costs of enforcement, because that makes a difference of, and I don't think you've mentioned in here what costs are. If I remember correctly, I don't remember seeing it in here what the numbers are, what those fees would be. But certainly that's something we would have to discuss as well. So for my opinion, I think that we are going a little bit too far with what we have here. I'd be more apt to see this, to receive this as information and to look at a simpler version for identifying these short-term accommodations that we have in our community. So that's my thoughts and comments. Councilor Reid.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I agree with that as well. Like this, obviously a lot of work went into this report and I appreciate that. But also, do we play the, we know about these, but we're not going to bother inspecting them card? And that plays a factor too for us for many reasons, fire safety. How many people, like you said, if there's too much parking going on, you've got maybe cars parked on the road, you can have cars parked on the road in the winter, then it impacts other departments as well. Like we have to figure out what the balance would be there, because we can't just ignore it maybe, but we also can't say, yeah, we know they're there, but not do any kind of regulation for it.
Other comments? And just to go on that, that's something that maybe in the simpler version that we could have that in place. But these have also, when you look at it, they've been in existence for many, many, many years in our township and elsewhere without having, as we say, very few complaints in it. And I don't know how many complaints the OPP get, but I'm sure we could ask them and find that out as well. But if we're not having a problem with them, not to say you won't have in the future, but I don't think over-regulating is the answer either. So we do need to have direction, council. We do have the resolution that I read on the floor. Receive it for information, receive the attached draft bylaw. Ask staff to move ahead with a public meeting and public submissions and bring back something to council, which is similar to this. Does council want to go forward with that, or does council have other suggestions they would like to put on the table for resolution? Yeah, it'd be great to have an answer. from what council
I'm
would
good
like.
with it the way it is,
You're good the way it is?
just because I feel like until we hear from the public, we don't really know what the public thinks, right? So.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. The resolution as read then, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this resolution? Opposed? That's carried. Moving on to item number 9.4.2. This is moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reid, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information planning report PL 2024-05, and that council discuss and advise staff of their position related to the proposed use and direct staff to prepare an amending bylaw. This is in the rezoning application for ZBA 2024-09, the Horst property. Turn that over to the planners. Linda Redmond.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the public meeting, I went over the main points of the property. I won't go over that again. And then my report outlines the policy framework that would be applicable to this property and the proposed use on it. So again, I won't go over that. I'm assuming everybody read my report. I just will touch on the MDS because to me, that's kind of the biggest the issue that maybe needs more explanation. Let me put it that way. So I just want to point out first that the two farmers that are impacted, that the farms that we received the farm data forms and that I did the calculations, and then in my figure 1, you can see the MDS arcs from their manure storage and their livestock facilities and how they intersect on the property. Just want to let everybody know that I did reach out to those two farmers. I provided them with this map and their calculations and advised them that their barns were impacted by this proposed use. And if they had any questions or concerns to, reach out, or in addition to the fact that this would be before council tonight. So they are well aware of the impacts to their barns. I have not heard from either one of them, other than the one farmer did respond to correct the calculation. He had put the wrong manure type, so I was able to amend that quickly and fix it and send him an amended one. The other thing I want to point out with these MDS calculations is that as indicated by Mr. Horse, the farm across the road was already impacted by the horse property. Their barn is already impacted for expansion. They did do an expansion in 2020 and had to get a minor variance to allow the barn to expand closer to the Horst residence. So that barn is already impacted by that property. I suppose if they wanted to do an expansion behind, more to the rear, then that would be a different MDS calculation, and perhaps that wouldn't be impacted, but we wouldn't know that unless we ran that assumption. And then the other item I want to discuss is that just to make council aware, because I don't know if maybe this council has ever dealt with any of these types of zoning matters, but there is an opportunity, and we've done it in the past, if everybody is on board with this approach, we can do what we call a reciprocal zoning, which would then provide relief to the subject property from the MDS1 requirements to the livestock facilities, but then we could also address it on those farms that are impacted, and we could provide an exemption for MDS to the horse property. So it's reciprocal. And we've done it with other matters where this has happened in the use, and all the farmers were okay with it. And then that way there is no impact for expansion to that property only. There's various ways to do it. We can include it in the zoning with Mr. Horst under his property, where we can indicate it is an on-farm diversified, or there's various ways to do it, to handle it. But that is an option that is available, that should the other farmers be okay with, we could do that, and that would help to alleviate impacts to them. Other than that, I don't have anything further to say. If there's any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you, Linda. So questions from council on this report? Councilor Martin?
Sure. My comments are kind of spread all across this page, so it's a comment. I do appreciate the report from the planner and the delegation of the applicant tonight. I do think the applicant probably sensed the frustration of council last time we were speaking about this application. I think that frustration is, echoed by members of the Committee of Adjustment as well. This is probably the only application that I continue to take phone calls and text messages on from former members of that particular committee. As it was kind of flagged like 5-6 years ago as it's going to be an issue property moving forward. So I do think though that the WFA kind of parsed it down really nicely in that this application is not about the merits of the business, right? I think it's been clearly established that Mr. Hurst runs an excellent business. He's had numerous references to that effect, including another one tonight. So that's great to hear. But what it's really about are issues with the application and the use of the building. You know, I mentioned the Committee of Adjustment piece in the past. I think there's trust issues around the information that was provided originally. You know, the WFA is like the primary advocacy group for farmers in our township. They don't support it. They feel it's inappropriate. You know, it's potentially precedent setting for me. Like if this gets approved, I don't know, you know, how we're ever going to deny something moving forward. You know, we have some of the best farmland in the country here in Mapleton. And quite frankly, if we don't protect the integrity of it, like I'm not sure who's going to, because Mapleton equals farmland. That's what we are as a farming community. So I think that my opinion is that, you know, despite what was said, you know, during the multiple planning processes that have been around this application, I think the goal all along has been to establish a business on this property. Mr. Hurst even indicated as such at our last meeting of council. And I don't enjoy that concept myself. I think this is kind of a prime example of kind of say what you need to get it built. And then once it's an established building, an existing building, then the argument of, you know, proposed use for an existing building, like we've seen tonight and in other applications, you know, becomes very much a supporting argument to keep or to allow what the proposed use is. But I think truthfulness and transparency around the original application would have, you know, arguably the building would have never been drawn a permit in the first place. It just simply wouldn't have, because it's not something that we would support in that particular location. And then we did talk a little bit, or the planner talked a little bit about, you know, alternative locations for a business like this, because I think it is definitely a desirable business from Mapleton. It's one that supports this business. He seems to enjoy working here. Like there's no issues with the business. So I think if there's a will, there's a way. You know, the applicant has shown some real creativity in getting this building up in the first place. And I think you combine that with a really creative CAO like we have, all of a sudden magic can happen, right? And we can figure something out if that's the desire of both parties, right? And I think that that would be the responsible thing for us to do, is to promote that avenue versus an inappropriate use in this particular location that's being proposed. So that's my perspective on it. That's how I'm going to vote. But I'm only one.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Other comments? Councilor Ottens?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm always willing to work with people who have made honest mistakes and, you know, who unintentionally built something, not realizing they weren't allowed. But my big issue here is the knowledge that it wasn't allowed, asking for a zoning amendment in 2019 for a construction business, being denied, and then building in 2020 and putting in a construction business. So it's the intentional part of that that I really struggle with, and I really don't like to reward that, because as Councillor Martin alluded to, where does it stop? Then everyone can do what they want and ask for forgiveness later. And that's not how we want to run a township. And that's not how we want our businesses to run. I mean, then anyone can build beside your business in your home too and say, oops, didn't know, didn't mean it. It's my lawyer's fault. It's not how we work here. We want things to be upfront. And so that's how I feel. I don't feel like we should reward any sort of application that was done with the intent of deceiving us in the first place.
Thank you, Councilor Ottens. Other comments? Councilor Reid.
Through you, Mayor. Again, just my opinion here, looking back at the background information and seeing something come up that was clearly noted as being a personal use and then changing in the background. And again, at our last meeting, they knew they were going to do that anyways. And it was the perception that it's done already and we're going to kind of let it go. But the deception of just that process in whole, it's there for a reason. And I think this is an example of that, and it's nothing about the business for me. It's a well-known business in Mapleton. I've seen houses being built around the corner from me. But the process in which it went through wasn't to the best of the applicant in a sense.
Thank you. Any other further comments or questions? All right, council. So we do have the resolution here. As I read, that Township of Mapleton Council received information planning report PL 2024-05. And it finishes off in that council discuss and advise staff on their position related to proposed use and direct staff to prepare an amending bylaw. I need someone to move an amendment to this resolution. You have one, because we need to do something. Councilor Martin.
I would propose an amendment to deny the application.
So would you propose to strike out the second part and then put in and deny the application?
That would meet my needs, sir.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Ottens, to second that. Any comments or questions on that amendment? All right, so we'll vote on the amendment first. All those in favor of the amendment? All right. So now it is resolution. It's still moved by Councillor Martin and second by Councillor Reid, correct? That Township of Mapleton Council received for information planning report PL 2024-05 and council denies the application. All in favor? That is carried. Application is denied. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on our agenda. Public Works Report on the proposed ice allocation policy. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor Davison and council. Presented tonight is the document provided to us by our solicitor when we had reached out to them about an ice allocation policy. We did in the past have some delegations come to council, or a delegation and some emails back and forth with staff to some of the renters or potential renters of the facility. So in front of you is the document. Council's direction was to have this document go to the Parks and Rec Committee for review and comment. So we did that. Councillor Martin give a little history there on our meeting. It was a fairly long meeting, and a lot of good information came from that. So out of the meeting, 3 things were brought to our attention. The number 1 in the report would be in 2C to raise that age to accommodate U21 for the oldest group of hockey players if there is a team within Mapleton. Number 2 was 2D was to add minor groups that do not have any of the other things within there, like 1 to 4, but they still are an organized league. We have a league on Saturday morning that's is not organized. Well, they are organized, but they don't have a constitution and some of the other things. So it was to add them. We didn't want to exclude that group on Saturday morning. They've been around for quite a while. And then the last thing was to add groups that have legacy. So Uncle Greg's been renting hockey for 20 years, an hour and a half on one night, and that would be a legacy one. So I went through it and with Amy, and we kind of looked at it on number 2 is adding that 2D number 5, which V is adding that to the bottom of the minor sports groups. And then also above there in C, we added 21, the age of 21 with a date defined for the December 31st. The only one we didn't put anywhere was the groups having legacy. So that's why I was kind of looking for council. I was kind of thinking in my own mind that we would put the legacy within number 1 with which really isn't needed. That's your public skatings and providing family time and that kind of stuff. And potentially into number 2, putting some legacy in there for those, for the groups that I just talked about, that've had long-time rentals, and they are minor groups under that age of 21. And then potentially in number 3, for the adult nonprofit, is adding a bit of legacy in there. But that was just my thoughts. Some of the tournaments are legacy. It was just some looking for some guidance from council where they wanted to basically put the legacy part of it in the policy. We received this on May 29th, I think I received the policy, and we had a pretty quick turnaround. We had our meeting on June 13th, so it was a fairly quick turnaround. But in general, the committee, the Parks and Rec committee, were very, I think, happy with the policy and the wording in our mission statement and stuff, and how we would be transparent. So.
Thank you. So I do have the resolution here that the Township of Mapleton Council received Public Works Report PW 2024-13 dated July 9th, 2024 regarding the ice allocation policy, and that the ice allocation policy be reviewed by council along with recommendations made by the Parks and Recreation Committee on June 13th, 2024. So Mr. Morgan has asked if we looked at the 3 items that were provided through the discussions with the Parks and Recreation Committee. Any comments on those 3 items from members of council? Whether we should put those in, whether we agree with Parks and Rec Committee to include those? I know Mr. Martin was at that meeting. What does council think about adding those 3 up? For myself, I don't have a problem with any of them. I think the legacy renters, of course. And we look at the Mapleton minor organizations, minor sports group. You look at for many years, refereeing hockey, and late at night after doing a midget game, then the Mennonite group would come on and play hockey late in the evening. So, that's the groups that have been around. They're organized, but they don't have an affiliation. And that was going to be one of my questions. And Mr. Morgan talked about that, because on item number IV, to be affiliated with a recognized regional, provincial, or national organization, but these legacy groups and this recognized Mapleton minor organizations that do not fall under that, number 2, that makes sense. And then that will allow that group, the Mennonite group, to continue getting ice time like they have for many years. So, Mr. Martin?
Add one name that we haven't talked about yet, and that's Reachforth. The committee did talk about them specifically as someone, a user group that we want to protect. That's part of the legacy piece. There's a really good chance that 80% of their registered players do not reside within Mapleton. But it's been a user group that they come from nearby, but not necessarily just Mapleton, right? So it's an alternative to minor hockey, avoids play on Sunday, all those different reasons that kids may want to enjoy an organized minor sport outside of minor hockey. So I do think we have an interest. It's been a really valuable group, both to our facility and our community, and the folks that have been running it. So again, may not have a constitution, they may, but they certainly wouldn't have any affiliation. So the committee did talk about trying to protect Reachforth specifically as well. Now, in that same breath, one would argue that, 10 years from now, if another organization like Reachforth came along and didn't have 80% or have that number of local residents and the argument of ice time allocation, it may not be one that's supported unless, in fact, there's a lot of free ice and we can accommodate that stuff. This policy still allows for it. So I think in a way, it's a shame we have to get to a policy, but here we are. So I think it's great that we have something in front of us. And that was kind of the first priority of this exercise. The second one was kind of honoring the legacy of the groups that are here, respecting the Mapleton taxpayer, the Mapleton ratepayer, and then making sure that there's equal opportunity for any of it's not leftover ice, the remaining ice, for anybody that wants to enjoy it, right? Whether it's minor hockey from, I don't know, Minto, they got lots of ice, somewhere else that's looking for ice. And we've got it. Let's absolutely open it up for them, right? So, I do think.
Would Reachforth would they be a legacy group? Because they've been around a long time?
Yeah, I would argue that they would meet the definition of a legacy group, right?
Okay.
For our intent, our purposes anyway. So I think the committee was, you know, they love the idea all around the table of this, maybe just making it a little less formal, which is where the proposals came from about constitutions and such. So try to make sure we appreciate and honor those that are the current existing user groups and then kind of create a path forward. So I like it. I think it hits most of, with the tweaks, I think it hits most of what we're looking for. And then with, I believe it's an annual review potentially mixed in there. If it doesn't work exactly as we want, then we can kind of tweak it moving forward too. So.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. That was kind of my question, or my thought was to be affiliated with a recognized regional, provincial, or national organization, and some of our groups definitely do not have that. So it's good to have that. I did not know about the at least 80% registered players, and Reachforth might not meet that criteria. So maybe that's got to be included in that as well, unless the legacy, just the legacy part will cover that off. Go ahead.
Yeah, to you, Mayor Davison. Thank you, Councillor Martin, for that. We were trying to, I wasn't going to use any names, but that was number 2D. V was the minor group that didn't have them. So we were trying to catch them. They kind of get caught, I think, in two of those. The only other thing, and our new director of finance brought it up, is there a timeline with that we want to put with legacy? Is there a 5-year or a 10-year kind of going back in time to be considered legacy?
I would suggest that we need to have a timeline in there of some kind. That they've been renting for, say, a decade. That'd be a legacy. That would be my thoughts, and I open it up to council. What is a legacy? How many years does a legacy make? Certainly not 2. Councilor Tamlin, what's your thought? What does a legacy make? 40 years? Oh.
There you go. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Well, if you were to put a number on it, I think 5 years is also quite a long time going back or something being well established. There is an annual review of this as well, because obviously if some of these legacy groups as well, or their membership and attendance is dropping, then it just has to be reassessed as you go. But to have a provision for that in there is important.
Councilor Martin.
I think we've been trying to define a legacy for a long time. The Blackhawks tried to call themselves one. The reality is there hasn't been one since the Habs and the Leafs back in the old days, right? I honestly, like, if Mikey Martin and friends were renting it Thursday nights at 9:30 for an hour and a half, and they were doing that last year, we could even start with existing groups. Like, hey, you want back in on your 10:30s on Thursday night? And then we roll, right? If you don't want it, like we could just make it as existing user groups, and you offer back their ice time slot that they had. If they're happy with it, if they don't want it, then that's available for anybody now. But certainly if there's a bigger number the council wants to put on it, that's fine too. I think it's the intent of it, right?
So I agree, absolutely. But then you have to look at the longevity of this. So it's because they use it this year. 5 years from now, when this policy's there, that group might just use it for that 1 year. So I think they're going to have, grandfather in the existing groups and then have a number attached to it, so that this policy's, it's a live policy anyway. We can change it and modify it, but I think you have to have some kind of number in there. Existing groups that have used it last year would be grandfathered in, and then as a legacy, and then have a number going further. Councilor Reid.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I was going to suggest something similar, knowing who used the ice last year. You don't want to cut them out of their time that they've had. So maybe starting with this policy, going back for that year and seeing who was booked in, allowing those groups to all have their time slots, let's say, and then being able to allocate that ice differently if need be. Because some of those groups may be like, hey, we're actually done. We're not doing this anymore. And we can use those spaces for other groups. But if it has to be a number, I kind of agree with Councilor Tamlin, like 5 years. But I really think if people have been using it consistently last year, to all of a sudden throw this policy in and then cut them out would be unfair. So going back to those user groups would be cognizant of council.
All right, so could council agree with the user groups currently or use it last year and then from then on in and then on over later on, it'll be a 5-year number? Can council agree with that? Yep. Okay. And does council agree with the 3 changes then made by the Parks and Rec Committee? Okay. All right, so those, I don't see anybody opposed to that. So, Mr. Morgan, is there anything else you require from council on this policy to make it work?
Team Mayor Davison, no, I think we have enough direction here to implement the changes to the policy and return the first weekend in August to take the draft off it and make it an official policy. In the meantime, being we're getting really close, we have had phone calls from some of the user groups. We're gonna move forward with booking some of the ISEN on council's recommendations. And if that's okay, and then we can start booking the ice. We are into July, so and then I'll bring it back to remove the draft.
Is council okay with booking ice time with this draft policy in place, knowing that there's going to be some changes that we've already agreed to? And booking it that way? Anybody opposed to that? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Councilor Tamlin, you have anything else? Councilor Martin?
Just a quick, it's a pertinent negative that's not included in this, and the committee talked about it. So what this doesn't talk about is if Councillor Reed sells her rental property and decides to resurrect the Drayton Iceman at some point, and you want to bring a senior men's hockey team to town. This doesn't speak to what would happen in the event of. I know there was a rather disruptive process for new teams and some of our neighbors when they were started. So this doesn't address any of that, just for like complete clarity, right? So in the event that that would be a proposal, that's something that Jamie would have to tackle, I guess, unless I'm mistaken on this policy.
Mr. Morgan, you can answer that question and answer, do we even have enough ice time to have a junior BC team right now?
Currently, it would be very late at night or very early in the morning. We do have ice available. We always have ice available, and staff has said that they would stay till whatever, as long as there was no gaps. That is something that if we were to go outside this policy in the scheduling that we have, that would definitely come back to council as a revision to this policy. That would be a major change, in my opinion, to what we presented to council. We would come back.
Thank you for that, Councilor Martin. I know that we've had phone calls from organizations wanting to set up a junior type team here, but the answer is we don't have the ice time that they would actually need to do that at the moment anyway. So. Anything further from council on this? I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. It's carried. Moving on to item number 10, approval of bylaws. Item 10.3, moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Reed. Bylaws number 2024-031, 2024-032, and 2024-033. Be hereby ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 9th day of July, 2024. Any comments or questions on any of those 3 bylaws? All in favor? It's carried. Resolution 10.4, moved by Councilor Reed, second by.
Just a note that that is a bit of an addendum because it wasn't in the original agenda. It
Yes.
goes back to the previous.
Okay, so this one here, one of the items we talked about earlier tonight was the sod and drain. So this is a resolution moved by Councilor Reed, second by Councilor Martin, that bylaw number 2024-027, being a provisional bylaw to authorize the improvement of the sod and drain, be hereby ready third time and finally enacted in this 9th day of July 2024. Any questions on that? All in favor? That's carried. We have no correspondence for council's direction. There's a number of items for council's information there. Does anybody wish to speak to any of those items on council's information? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 12-2. Mr. Ellis sent in a thank you. So just recognizing the PMD Community Center manager and the staff for making that Eagles tribute show a success. I did not make it. Would have loved to. Looked
Good
like
show.
a really great time. So they were very appreciative of the assistance of our staff. So
Yes, thank you, Mr. Martin. They certainly were, and I know Mr. Ron Ellis was praising our staff for the amount of work they did. And they raised a good amount of money that evening. It was a really good event. So thank you, staff, for the hard work you put in to these, all of, not just this event, but all the events that we have and making all of our user groups feel respected in our community. Anything further? All right. There's anybody have other business? Item 15. Counselor Ottens first.
Okay. Two quick things. We did the safety day on July 7. It was a Friday, 11 till 2, so it was a work day for a lot of people, but we still had very good turnout. 104 kids came out. We gave out free ice cream to 104, plus their siblings and adults. Estimate about 150 people came out. And yeah, it was a very well put together event. And then also just want to draw attention to the Drayton 150. We had a meeting last night where a number of staff members were there as well. So set June 27, 28, and 29 on your calendar. It's the last weekend of June of 2025. There'll be events all weekend. So all weekend.
You want to repeat that again?
All
weekend. Okay,
weekend.
just making sure.
There's no, there's food, and then there's more food. So, and events.
All weekend.
So just put that on your calendar now so you don't miss it. And
So I'll repeat that, Drayton 150th celebration, the 27th, 28th, and 29th of June 2025, all weekend. Gotcha. Councilor Reed?
I also just wanted to send a compliment over to Parks and Rec. We've had Canada Day and have seen so many compliments come through, whether it be online, in person, or just about how amazing it was. So I wanted to share the compliments of that. They enjoyed the entire day. You've seen anything from the face painting to the fireworks pictures online, and they've all been great. So a big kudos to Amy and everybody who had a part in that. And I just wanted to thank council as well for supporting my nomination for AMO. And I have been nominated officially, and we will be going to AMO in hopes of gaining a rural board of director position.
All right, thank you. And I will say that our fireworks day from 4 p.m. until whenever the fireworks were done was fabulous. And we had the best turnout we've ever had for our Canada Day. It was just amazing, the number of people that were down there. And thank you, Amy and the team, for that amazing day. And I know we had some giveaways that were gone within, what, 40 minutes? Very fast. And we had Amy, tell us how many we had and what happened that day, because it was a really good event.
Through you, Mayor, to council. It was a great event. We lucked out with weather as well, which always helps. And yeah, it was fantastic. We had a record number of cars come out for the Rotary Car Show. So they saw 48 cars. The fire department associations, both Drayton and Moorfield, hit a record number for them as well. So they were pretty happy about their boot toll that took place. The market people were also very, very happy with their sales that day. They said they tripled what they normally would at a Mapleton market. So everyone was happy. Everyone seemed to be having a great time. And our team's just really happy that it all came together as well as it did. And it wouldn't have without everybody collaborating and coming together, as well as all of our community groups that were down there. That day was really an entire municipal event with all of our community groups and services down there, with so many of them willing to help out and make that day happen. We appreciate that.
Again, thank you, Amy, and your team for that and the great day, and of course, all the user groups, the Rotary Club with their car show, and all the vendors down there. It was truly fabulous. And the fireworks were amazing too. Very loud, 15 minutes of fireworks. You know, I see, people were complaining about their fireworks shows that were 9 minutes long, 11 minutes long, and here we are with 15 minutes in Mapleton. Fabulous work, and everybody enjoyed them. Any other business, any other comments? Councilor Martin?
I'm just gonna leapfrog off of this Canada Day stuff. So I don't know if I went there in an extra good mood or what, but like I swear the Moors get better every year. And the fact they were playing all Canadiana was even better. And Derek frankly gets better as the night goes on. So by the last couple of songs, he was even better than when they started. So yeah, we had a great time listening to them. The fireworks, so like, did we spend like a lot more money on fireworks this year or go to a different supplier? Cause like I swear there were fireworks there like towards the end I've never seen before, like that arrangement, like they were spectacular. So I don't know where you found them or where they came from or how much we spent on them over last year, but like they were really good. And like Carly and I and the boys were walking back to the car and we're like, not that that was Drayton, but like, holy crap, those were great fireworks, like better than we've seen. And not that they were crappy earlier, but like this year they were just exceptional. So we were kind of hearing those comments across the diamond and out the driveway as we were getting to the traffic jam. That was the exit.
And that's why I walk there. All right. Because I was walking down the middle of the road, what? All right, anything else on other business? All right, we don't have a closed session, so we go to item number 17, moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Reed. That bylaw number 2024-034, being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council, the corporation of Township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor, clerk, and sealed with a corporate seal. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks everyone for the comments and questions.